Hello, everybody. I really hope that everyone is doing well. Welcome back to a new video. And thank you, everybody who is supporting my work on Patreon. And then everybody who is supporting my work on YouTube as well. I'm so grateful for every single one of you. And then all the messages and emails and that I receive. I'm really trying to reply to all of them, even though I don't manage sometimes to do all of it because I have so many things happening at the same time, but I'm doing my best. So thank you again. All right, so today I wanted to talk about our ascension a little bit, like the ascension of the earth, the ascension of our civilization, like humanity, and then the fourth dimension as well, because that is a very important topic to discuss, the fourth dimension. And the concept is not to be confused with the fourth density because they are two different concepts and they can only be used interchangeably to a certain degree. But there is a difference between dimensions and the densities. But I don't want to talk about that in today's video. That is a topic that requires a whole new video. And I used to use these two concepts interchangeably in the past as well. So I think many of us did, like densities and dimensions, but they are not the same thing, let's just say. Okay, but this is not today's topic. So today's topic is the fourth dimension, the plane of chaos. So the fourth dimension is a chaos plane. And then also I want to talk about Mars as well and planets a little bit. So a bit of a cosmology, because really the understanding of our cosmology is required to understand what this whole ascension process is, what this transcendence is into a higher level of consciousness, and then also what is this initiation. And that can really help us because we have bits and pieces of information coming from everywhere, but then we really don't have the full picture about what these interdimensionals are, what the dimensions are as well, and what is really happening and how the past is being connected to our future and how our future is being connected to our present and then also interconnected to each other. So this is very important to understand what is happening with this ascension right now. And what I will be talking about today is based on the teachings of Rudolf Steiner. And I recommend his teachings to every single one of you because it is really helping us to put the pieces together and to have the full concept, the full big picture. All right, so I already talked about the different planets of the solar system and how they are interconnected and how every single one of them is representing an aspect of the earth as well. So they are representing an aspect of the earth, and then those aspects are being centralized in the central sun, and the central sun is having all the aspects of all the planets basically. So this is something that the astrology is about, because whenever we are being influenced by these planets, actually those aspects of us are being activated at that time. So that activation is happening based on the position of the planets and their connection to each other. Because these different planets are having the aspects of us, of our planet, of the Earth. They are also representing different eras of the Earth, different dimensions of the Earth. Because whenever the Earth is going through an initiation to a higher level of consciousness, to a higher density and higher dimension, there's always a split that happens at that moment. So what is really happening is that the Earth is splitting into two. Like one aspect of it will go upward because of that initiation. That aspect of the Earth that has passed the initiation will go upward. And then one aspect of it, it will go downward. That aspect that has not passed the initiation will go downward and it will become more dense. So this is a result of this initiation. This is a natural result of that. It's a natural manifestation of that. So there are different eras and different life cycles of each planet. And there are life cycles of the Earth as well. And what is happening with the consciousness as well, one part of it will go upward, the other part of it will go downward. That doesn't pass that initiation. And this is when we are hearing so much about the consciousness split, the shift in consciousness. So as a natural result, there will be leftover energy, which I already talked about in my 8th sphere video, but the other part of it will migrate upward into a higher level of existence. And that's why we are talking about two different earth planes. We are talking about the third dimensional earth plane, and we are talking about the fifth dimensional earth plane, a 5D earth plane. So this is what is happening now. It is a shift in consciousness. It is a split in consciousness, basically. And this is not the first life cycle of the earth when this shift has happened. It has happened in the past as well. And I wanted to talk about these smaller planets that are very close to Earth. And that is Mars, that is Mercury, and Venus. And all of them, each and one of them, is representing a dimensional existence of the Earth. They are representing different dimensions of existence of the Earth. And I already said that in my video about the Venusians, that Venus is actually a higher aspect of the Earth. And then the 8th sphere is a lower aspect of the Earth. But the 8th sphere is a sphere which is like a container of energy, a low density container of low vibrational energy. And it's constantly feeding itself off the emotions of humans, because in and of itself, in its own mechanism, it cannot exist. So it does need to be parasitic to feed itself off. But I did not talk about the smaller planets, the other planets like Mercury and Mars, for example. So what is happening with Mercury, for example, is that Mercury is the feminine aspect of the Earth. And it's the old aspect, the old feminine aspect of Venus. So we are talking about etheric cosmology, like on the astral. We are talking about on the astral. And then Mars is the masculine expression of the Earth. It is the old masculine expression of the Earth that did not pass the initiation. It is representing a masculine civilization, and it's an old phase of Venus. So Venus has passed that initiation, and it's a fifth dimensional civilization. We can say that it is a future initiation of the Earth. But Mars did not pass that. So it is representing the old aspect of Venus. So these concepts are quite hard to understand, because we are talking about the astral, we are talking about etheric cosmology, not like physical one. We are not talking about the physical planets and what is perceivable for humanity and for science at the moment and for the classical cosmology. But let's just say that Mercury is a feminine aspect of the Earth, and then an old aspect of Venus, and then Mars is a masculine aspect of the Earth, an old masculine aspect. So let's just say that, and then Venus is a higher expression of the Earth. And there's so much that myself as well, like I need to clarify in my mind about this etheric cosmology, so there's so much to learn for me. But to simplify things, we can say that Mars is that masculine aspect that did not pass the initiation because it was so out of balance. It is representing a divergent timeline of this overly masculine energy that was very, very off balance, and that's why it did not pass that initiation. That's why it became artificial, and the civilization itself very obsessed with technology, very obsessed with masculine energies, this antichrist stream. But along the way, according to Rudolf Steiner, planet Venus has been switched in cosmology with Mercury. So what we know to be as Mercury the planet is actually Venus. And Mercury is the closest planet to the sun, but in reality that is Venus. So I'm not exactly sure why this has happened in cosmology, but I believe that it was probably a negative influence as well. I need to get more into that in order to understand. But it's explaining to me why the Venusians needed to leave their planet temporarily and to come to the Earth for a while, and then they went to the Alpha Centauri star system as well because of the harsh conditions of the sun. And I believe the reason for that switch was to cause a misunderstanding about the real cosmology, and that probably is influencing astrology nowadays as well. And but I'm not exactly sure how it translates, that switch. So that would be an interesting concept to get into. But anyways, from a higher dimensional plane, a higher dimension, the Earth, Venus, Mars, and Mercury are all representing one merged consciousness. But if we are moving lower, like we are moving down to the fourth dimensional plane, then we can perceive these different dimensional consciousness and different planets separately. And we can see these different aspects separately as well, because this is what lower dimensions are standing for duality, for polarity, but then higher dimensions are about non-duality, are about unity. So from a higher perspective, these planets are actually all one and representing one consciousness. And in terms of the other planets, the bigger planets that are further away, like for example, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, and then Pluto, they are also storing information of the Earth, and then the past of the Earth, and karma as well, and the future of the Earth. But these are kind of different stories. They are further away from the aspects of the Earth. So they are a little bit different stories. Okay, so one of these shifts in consciousness, shifts in densities, happened when the Earth was shifting from a feminine era to a masculine era. And this is when the fourth dimension became solid. And the fourth dimension is a chaos plane. So what happened at this initiation? There was a stream of souls, a wave of souls that passed the initiation, and there was a wave that did not pass the initiation. So that aspect of the Earth sank into the third dimension, and this is the Earth that we are on right now, the third dimensional Earth. And the other one has ascended to a higher level of existence, higher plane as well. And what happened with this third dimensional Earth is that the Earth became surrounded by this chaos plane more than ever before, this fourth dimensional chaos plane, which I talked about in my 8th sphere video, because that fourth dimensional chaos plane is actually the 8th sphere. The 8th sphere is that plane of chaos. It is fourth dimensional, and it created divergent timelines with some unfinished business. And that unfinished business and that leftover energy that did not pass this initiation phase got trapped in the lower astral, in the fourth dimension or 8th sphere, and it became very, very prominent. So a third dimensional Earth that was existing just before this, before the initiation, wasn't as confusing as this fourth dimensional plane now, because whenever the Earth is close to end times, and this is what is happening right now, this fourth dimensional plane is becoming very, very prominent, and the 8th sphere comes very close to the Earth. It is surrounding it, and that's why everything is so confusing, everything is so chaotic. And I said it already in one of my Patreon videos that the veil between these dimensions is becoming very, very thin when this happens. And right now it's very, very thin. So we very easily get information from all different dimensions, but we get information easily from the fourth dimension as well, and 8th sphere or 8th sphere. And that fourth dimension is the mirror realm, and everything that is being stored in that mirror realm, that unfinished consciousness that is being stored there, is teaching humanity. So this is where the trauma healing is happening. This is where the integration is happening as well. And this is where the transmuting of karma is also taking place. So it is very, very close to the Earth. And that's why I already said that it's actually serving as a bridge and not as a destination. So humanity is not being initiated to the fourth dimension because we are already there, and this is where we can transmute our karma. When that transmutation of karma happens, then we can pass that initiation and we can pass the fourth dimension which is the plane of chaos, and we can move to the fifth dimensional consciousness. So humanity is ascending to the fifth dimensional consciousness, but right now we are dealing with this fourth dimensional unfinished business and that energy that is being stored there, so we can transmute it. And without transmuting it and without embracing the trauma of humanity, our own trauma, we cannot pass that dimension. And this is what happened with many fallen interdimensionals. And by fallen, I mean like they descended, they did not ascend to a higher level, but then they descended, and that's where the fallen angels, the concept of the fallen angels is coming from, because these interdimensionals, these entities are being trapped in that fourth dimension. They failed their own initiation and they are no longer having access to that life force energy that they should have access to. And that's why they need to be parasitic, they need to be vampiric, they need the energy of other entities, and that's why they are binding themselves with humanity to get that life force energy. And also because they don't have access to this life force energy, they need to alter themselves in order to survive. They need to become synthetic, which I already talked about. And what they do, they oftentimes they merge themselves genetically with insects and with lizards in order to survive harsh environments. So this is where these hybrids, the concept of these hybrids is coming from, and these lizard type beings. And one very good example for the divergent timeline of humanity is the Greys. And I kind of talked a little bit about the Greys in one of my videos, that they are a future version of humanity, the human race that did not pass this initiation. But the Greys also require a whole different video for, you know, the understanding of it, because there's so much to say about the Greys as well. But yeah, these beings are being trapped there, and they need AI, and they need to merge themselves with all sorts of beings in order to survive these very harsh conditions, because they don't have the life force energy. I also touched upon the moon a little bit, that it is representing the past epoch of the earth and the karma of the earth. So there's a lot of karma that is being stored in the moon. And what happened with the moon was basically that the previous epoch of the earth, before this masculine epoch that we are closing right now, there was a feminine epoch. And when the density shift happened, this consciousness shift happened, the earth has ejected the moon. So the moon was pulled from the earth in a way. And this occurred at the split of these worlds in order to allow the earth to move forward in its own expression. So there was this leftover energy, this old energy of the earth, of this feminine era, that was ejected from the earth and now is being stored in the moon. So many of you have probably heard about the moon that is actually an artificial satellite that is has been created some time ago. Now that is partially true, because what happened actually, as I said, is that at that time of the split, it was ejected from the earth. So the earth can move forward, but it is storing now the karma of that feminine era. So the moon is representing that era which is gone, that epoch that is gone. And these interdimensionals that are being trapped in the fourth dimension, in the eighth sphere, what they are doing is that they are trying to manipulate and alter the surface of the moon as well, and the structure of the moon as well, in order to pass that dimension, in order to pass that moon lock. Because if the karma hasn't been transmuted, that is being stored in the moon, that the karma of that feminine era, then the moon kind of locks you in. So that's why you have heard many times probably about the moon lock. And they are trying to use technology and to create technology that is allowing them to pass, but they cannot, because only with initiation that can happen, only with the transmutation of karma, and they don't have the life force energy to transmute that karma. So there is a very strong bond between the earth and the moon because of that reason. So it is not really artificial, the moon. It has been altered to be artificial because of the fear of that moonlock. And then the energy of the moon is being used as well, like artificially. There's technology that is harnessing the energy of the moon in order to lock in other souls as well, so they cannot pass through that moon lock either. But that only works with souls that have not transmuted their karma and have not integrated the fragments of their soul, because the fragmentation of the soul is being stored also in the moon and then in other planets as well. So the moon is kind of still reckoning us. And yeah, it is affecting these fourth dimensional entities that have not passed the initiation. So at the moment of these splits in consciousness that the earth is going through from time to time, there are different timelines, different dimensions, different dimensional spheres, as I said, that are being formed, that are being created naturally. And there's an organic timeline that goes through different densities naturally. And the inorganic timelines that are being created, they get trapped. They cannot go through different densities. They are being trapped in one particular dimension. And they normally destroy themselves as well. So what happened at this past ascension of the Earth was that there was the human population on Earth, on the 3D Earth, this third dimensional human population. But they were interdimensionals as well that came from higher dimensions in order to teach humanity, in order to help with this ascension. And they were being called gods because humans were looking at them as gods. So there was a split in consciousness, but not only for the human population, but then also for these gods that were teaching humanity. There was a split in consciousness for them that happened. So one stream of these higher dimensional beings that were actually fourth dimensional beings, not third dimensional as the human population, they began to link with the Venus sphere, which was fifth dimensional. But the other stream of these beings, they went downward and they fell and got trapped in the fourth dimension, that chaos plane, because they did not pass the initiation. So in the mythology, these beings were called gods. And this is where we can say the story of Lucifer began, that he got trapped in the chaos plane, in the fourth dimensional plane. So the fall of gods is actually talking about those entities that did not pass that initiation, ascension, and then Lucifer was one of them as well. So Lucifer is representing the old Venusian sphere, the fourth dimensional Venusian sphere. And what is happening right now is that low consciousness, that lower dimensional trapped consciousness wants to wipe out the high dimensional consciousness. And it becomes more and more synthetic, as I said, in order to survive. And because of that, it destroys itself, because it is an inorganic timeline. It is an inorganic expression of an initiation that failed. And in terms of Mars, as I said, it is representing the masculine aspect of the Earth. It is representing that masculine polarity of the Earth. And Mars actually has fallen into this masculine polarity, but this very imbalanced masculine polarity, very inorganic masculine polarity that has destroyed itself after a while. And they got obsessed. We are talking about a fourth dimensional planet, a fourth dimensional existence on Mars, like a higher dimension than the Earth. But the beings there, they got obsessed with technology and with the material. And then there was this enslavement and hierarchy going on there, and then the wars and the complete lack of feminine energy and the suppression of the feminine energy as well. So what happened was that Mars destroyed itself because of the wars. After a while, life wasn't existing any longer there. It wasn't possible there. So there was this soul migration that happened, like this forceful, like forced soul migration that came to the Earth. And the beings that were at that time on Earth, like the Pleiadians, Venusians, which, by the way, are representing future organic versions of humanity. But this is another story. So they are the past of humanity as well, but they are the future of humanity also. So the Pleiadians and Venusians, these high, very evolved beings that were on Earth, perceived this Martian soul migration as kind of a shock, because the Martians were actually representing lower aspects of them that did not pass the initiation. So the old aspects of them. So this forceful migration of the Martians, and by forceful, I mean that there was no proper incarnational cycle, but it was more like technology that was used to come to the Earth. So they kind of wormholed themselves into the Earth, like forcefully, like aggressively, not with an organic process. So this migration was followed by a lot of shame and a lot of guilt, because they were representing an old aspect of these beings. So these Martians, they merged with humans by DNA manipulation, by DNA alteration. They were very, very obsessed with that. And we are having right now the same influence on the Earth, the same Martian influence that is obsessed with this genetic modification. And this is what we are seeing right now with the injections as well. There is an obsession around that. There is an obsession of these lower vibrational beings of modifying the DNA structure of humans, modifying the organic structure of humans. Higher dimensional beings would never take the DNAs of human beings. They would never need to modify any DNA, because they already have the genetic code. They already have the DNA. They have already initiated organically. Only a lower dimensional being would need genetic modification. So genetic modification is always a red flag, a huge red flag. And it's happening as we speak. This obsession with wanting to alter it, wanting to alter the organic evolution of humanity. So a high vibrational being would never do such a thing, because it doesn't need it. So these low vibrational beings, all they have is technology that is replicating the real powers of a real human, an unaltered human, the organic power of a human. And they convince humanity as well that they are very advanced just because they have this technology. And oftentimes humans, and as I said, those that are connecting to these interdimensionals, they are being tricked in a sense that they think that they are actually interacting with very evolved beings just because they have this high technology. But this is all they have. Spiritually, they are very unevolved, very, very unevolved. So discernment is extremely important when it comes to these interdimensional beings and when it comes to interacting with these beings. So these lower beings have committed themselves to this antichrist stream already. And they do everything in order to wipe out the Christ consciousness, the Christ consciousness beings. So it is really the only thing that will help humanity to pass through the initiation of this fourth dimension is the transmutation of karma. And because it's a mirror world, what we are experiencing right now is that surfacing of that karma. That karma is being mirrored now, and we can transmute it. And this is what is happening with humanity right now. And when we manage to transmute that, then that will mean that we will rise above the fourth dimension, that plane of chaos. And I believe that it is already happening, because we are already in the process of transmuting it. That's why the whole thing that is happening now, it was brought up for that transmutation. So these lower beings and this whole war between the Antichrist consciousness and the Christ consciousness is happening because they are putting a lot of effort into suppressing this stream. And what is very typical with these beings is that they are trying to convince humanity to use shortcuts. And the shortcut is meaning their technology. So let's get more comfortable. Let's get, I don't know, robots. Let's get AI to do the work, to do the physical work instead of humans. And this is what they want to convince humanity, that this is how a civilized, evolved society looks like, that is relying on AI. So they are convincing humanity to use shortcuts, but not only with technology, but then also with ascension, like everything is going to be taken care of. You don't need to do anything. However, we cannot use shortcuts if we want to ascend, if we want to pass the initiation. We need to look at our karma, our traumas and fragmentation, and to really face our negative emotions, because that is the only way to rise above this fourth-dimensional mirror world. So we cannot really use shortcuts if we want an organic evolution. So the war is now about the organic and the synthetic timeline, as I already said like many times. And what these Martian beings did after they came to the Earth, like forcefully, they hijacked all the teachings that humans received from high dimensional beings. They distorted and they twisted those teachings as well. And they are doing it in the present as well. They are doing this with humanity in the present as well. And that's why we are seeing so many psyops. And unfortunately, so many people in the spiritual community are falling into the trap of those psyops as well. And behind those twisted theories and psyops, there is this Martian influence. There is this antichrist influence that wants people to become inactive and passive. So we have to be very, very careful with what we believe in and use discernment. And the only way is, as I said, is the integration of the negative, is the inner work, the shadow work. Because without shadow work, there is this distortion of what evolution really means. All right, so this is what I wanted to say for today. I hope this video made sense, because these concepts are quite hard to comprehend, but they are extremely important to understand. And it is extremely important to put the pieces together about our cosmology as well, in order to understand what our ascension is about, what is our transcendence is about into a high level of consciousness. So thank you everybody for being here. Thank you for your support. Take care of yourselves, and I cannot wait to see you next time.